It's the second trading day in the week. You're welcome to Business Morning, Business Incorporated live on Channels Television. Here's what's in focus today. South Africa's economic growth beats forecast despite being hit by the impact of US-Iran war. S&P says Senegal faces fresh debt scrutiny without a deal from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. And Ghana's Cocoa Board targets lower borrowing costs with tranche-based funding model. Great to have you join us on the show. I'm Anita Edet. Let's get a check on the commodities markets. First, starting with oil prices, which inched up early trade today after Iran and Israel left a door open to a possible resumption of attacks on each other, although they had to call a halt to the hostilities following an appeal from U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, let's take a look at the Brent crude. Brent crude price, it fell by 2.02%. So the price is at about $92.39 a barrel, while its contemporary, that's the US WTI crude, it was up by 2.39% at $89.14 a barrel. So that's it for the global oil prices. So they climbed as much as 5% in the previous session after renewed Israeli attacks on Iran and Lebanon reduced hopes of an imminent end to the wider war, but paired gains after Iran's armed forces announced the end of military operations against Israel. Now let's take a look at the other side of the commodities market, and this time we're talking about the bullion. So gold prices steadied on Monday as prospect for a potential Israel-Iran ceasefire helped the metal rebound from session's low. Those strong U.S. jobs data boosted expectations of a Federal Reserve's rate hike and limited upside. So now spot gold was down 0.36%, as you can see here at $4,350.10 an ounce, while spot silver, which is another commodities another precious metal there, it was down by a tad 0.01% at $68.57 per ounce. For platinum and the other metals that we are tracking here, platinum was up by almost 1%, 0.95% at $1,771.90 per ounce, while palladium was up by more than 2.4% at $1,245.0 per ounce. And finally, for copper, we see the price of copper up by 1.20% at $6.426 per ounce. So now, let's talk about the top stories that we have here. South Africa's economic growth has beaten forecast despite being hit by the war in between US and Iran. Now, the country posted a stronger than expected performance in the opening quarter of this year, showing resilience against global commodity and energy shocks. According to the country's statistics office, that's Stats SA, the gross domestic product GDP expanded by 0.5% in the first quarter of this year, and that's comfortably outperforming the market's median forecast of 0.3%. Now, while a major conflict in the Middle East disrupted global markets later in the quarter, the domestic impact was largely delayed. Now, Stats SA notes that the geopolitical shock didn't fully hit until late February, meaning the subsequent spike in the fuel prices will likely show its true impact in the upcoming Q2 data rather than Q1. So that's it for South Africa. Now let's move over to Senegal, where we see that S&P, which is one of the ratings agencies, says the country is facing a scrutiny without an IMF deal. So that's the country's debt is facing scrutiny. So Senegal's finances are actually facing severe pressure as S&P Global Ratings warns that a failure to secure fresh program with the IMF will deepen global concerns over the country's economic outlook. According to the Global Ratings Agency, the West African nation has a very high financial needs, with gross requirements estimated at nearly 30% of its gross GDP, domestic product GDP. Now, the warning is coming at a highly sensitive time for Dakar. Senegal's current fiscal crunch stems directly from a major transparency crisis that unfolded after the current administration of the President Bassirou Diomaye Faye took office in 2024, and the country's dollar bond has extended its loss this week, pushing the yield on its 2031 debt up to 24.56%, and that's matching a record high. Now let's move over to Ghana, where we see that the country's cocoa board is targeting lower borrowing costs with tranche-based funding model. Now, Ghana's Cocoa Board, as what they call the Cocoa Board, is preparing to introduce a tranche-based commercial paper program ahead of the 2026-2027 cocoa season. And this is as part of efforts to reduce financing costs, broaden domestic participation in funding, in cocoa funding, and lessen dependence on offshore borrowing. Ghana's mining sector, that's from Ghana's mining sector. Now, this new structure will allow the cocoa regulator to raise funds incrementally rather than borrowing an entire season's financing requirement upfront. And that move, officials say, will improve liquidity management and reduce interest expenses. So now let's talk about commodities, and this time eggs will be our center focus. So this commodity and affordable is also an affordable source of animal protein in Nigeria. So it plays a key role in household nutrition and food security. However, the price of a crate of eggs has risen by 33.3% year-on-year in this country, moving from approximately 6,000 naira in May last year to 8,000 naira just last month in this year. So that's one of the focus that we'll be having here. And to discuss that, we have Toju Megason, who's an analyst with FDC, to give us more details about that. If we have Tolu there to speak with us about that, let's have Tolu on the show right now.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for having me. Okay, now, Tolu, nice to have you on the show. So now I have my questions with you. First of all, I will be having that eggs remains one of the most widely consumed affordable animal protein. So now I would want to ask, what's the reason for the surge in the prices?
Good afternoon again. Thanks for having me. Yes, as you highlighted already, we've experienced a 33% increase in the price of eggs year on year, selling at 6,000 naira per crate in the market this time last year to now selling at 8,000 naira per crate in the market as of today. And this can easily be attributed to rising cost of production. This would be attributed to rising cost of production, as this is a major challenge that we face in our local poultry value chain, squeezing producers' margins, but also contributing to higher egg prices. Now, feed costs, that accounts for 70% of overall production costs, and with fluctuating prices of maize and soybeans that we've seen in recent time rising sharply, that's also attributed and been passed down onto the retail prices of eggs. But alongside this, we also have higher energy costs and higher transportation costs, which is driven by the US and Iran conflict that's currently ongoing since February. This has affected the distribution of eggs into the market, making it more expensive to do so. All in all, I can say that this increase in price reflects an expansion in the poultry sector. Although it's still hindered by structural inefficiencies and higher operation costs.
Okay, so now, Toju, I'm one of the consumers of eggs. Well, I think I like that. That's a part of protein. So now, what do you think that can be done to, if possible, reduce the price in the coming months? And how viable will that option be?
Well, yes, like you said, like the price of eggs are currently obviously exaggerated at the moment, and we have definitely seen lower levels. I still feel it is an affordable rate at 8,000, as in recent years we've seen the price of eggs actually fluctuate within a range between 6,000 to 8,000 thereabouts. What we can do to now reduce the price of eggs I feel like we're already off to a great start. Nigeria, we actually produce 600,000 metric tons to about 700,000 metric tons of eggs annually, and that's the largest in the whole of Africa. So obviously that has reduced our import reliance of eggs. But then obviously now when you're setting the price of eggs, it's going beyond just eggs itself. Like I touched on, it goes into production costs, which has to do with feeding, transportation, energy costs as well. So those things feed into it. And obviously the climate of which we are in right now, we understand why the energy prices are up. Now, in regards to feeding now, when it comes to like the grains they use to feed the chickens, for instance, maybe switching to alternative substitutes that are cheaper than your maize and your soybeans. So I know for a fact that we do produce maize here in Nigeria, but it's more expensive for these local farmers compared to the maize that's actually imported from other countries.
Okay, so Tolu, so now what's the outlook for the egg markets in your own perspective?
I expect it to remain relatively stable as it's been, but at the same time, if it does increase further, I do expect lower income households to possibly reduce their consumption of eggs or switch to substitutes like palm oil. But the thing about that is that palm oil isn't as rich in nutrition as eggs are, hence why it's such a stable, and hence why even with an increase in price, you don't really see that that immediate switch to a different commodity or a different substitute, such as palm oil, like I said, and the other alternatives that you source your protein from, like chicken, beef, and fish. They're more expensive than eggs.
Okay, so Tojo, I think we'll leave it there, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
So we go on a quick short break now. Business Incorporated will be back live on Channels Television. Welcome back. It's still Business Incorporated live on Channels Television. So for our viewers on DSTV, we have the official commissioning of the Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu flyover, and that is currently taking place in Ado-Ekiti. To be precise, the location is Ajilosun, Ado-Ekiti in Ekiti State. It's currently ongoing right now, so you can watch that live on our DSTV platform. But for other platforms that we have, the program continues. So that commissioning is actually going on our DSTV platform. So now let's get back to the markets. And we're looking at the African markets, which, of course, the indexes are actually mixed. This is because the sentiments are actually oscillating, going in between the greens and the reds. First, we're starting on the home front here, the NGX ASI, which managed to make some rebound. But then at intraday, the last track that we have was a 0.41% drop at intraday. Still very much comfortable within the 242,000 level, which has been going back and forth due to the impact of sell pressure as well as bargain hunting. And for the other side of the market, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange All-Share Index was more than 0.5%, 0.68% up. 101,849.94, that's the index level at intraday. Now for the EGX30, that's the Egyptian Stock Exchange All-Share Index there, it was at intraday about 0.89%, 52,342.72, while we see the Nairobi Stock Exchange All-Share Index closed for Monday was in the red 0.25%, 209.84. So now let's look at the other markets. We see that for the Middle Eastern markets, it's all positive at intraday. For the Dubai index, the two of them are on the United Arab Emirates. It's a green day for them at intraday, 0.99% and more than just a tad above 1% for the Abu Dhabi index there. The Dubai is 5,791.60, while the Abu Dhabi 9,579.53 for that index. Now for the other markets that we track within the Middle East, the Saudi Arabia's Tadawul will up by just a little above 1% there, while the Qatari Stock Exchange almost 2% up. Two of them for the Tadawul 11,090.88, and for the Qatari Stock Exchange 10,289.65. So that's it for the two markets within the Middle East. And the Asian markets, the regional bus is closed mostly higher. This is largely due to the impact of strong Chinese data as well as a rebound in some tech stocks there. So we see the Nikkei, well, gaining massive 2.17% on its index there, 65,416.63. That's for the Nikkei 225, the 225 top most capitalized companies on the Japanese stock exchange there. Now for South Korea's Kospi, wow, that's a massive 8.18% increase, and the Kospi is at 8,096.93, almost going into the 10,000 region. Maybe just in a couple of trading sessions to come within 2026, it might just hit that level. Now for the Hang Seng, we see that the Hang Seng was also up. Shanghai, that's for China, more than 1.2%, while the India's benchmark index, that's the Nifty 50, was up by more than 0.5%. So that's it for the markets within the Asia region. And then for the U.S. markets, we see that the stock futures, they're also rising on the this is coming as oil prices are falling, and then a rebound, continued rebound in the price of shares of tech stocks as well as AI related stocks. So we see for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the futures there was up by 0.28%. For the S&P 500, 0.48%, while the Nasdaq is up by 0.79% ahead of the opening bell, 2:30 Nigerian time. So now let's switch gears from US to European markets, where we see that the trading has opened there. But let's turn our attention to Berlin for a look at how European markets are trading. DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbelu has been keeping an eye on them for us. Now, Chiponda, how are European shares trading today?
Well, Anyetje, European stocks are rallying today as investors rush to buy the latest dip in tech stocks. The stock 600 is actually up 0.4%, and Germany's DAX is also trading higher around the same level. Now, market sentiment is being supported by the fall in oil prices after Israel and Iran agreed to hold attacks on each other for now. But of course, traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is well below normal levels. So that is something that remains a major concern for European countries, which are, of course, net energy importers. Now, markets have also fully priced in a 0.25% rate hike by the European Central Bank on Thursday. That will bring the benchmark interest rate here to 2.25% in the Eurozone. So the focus will be shifting to the forward guidance, which will perhaps provide some clues about where the key rate will end up at the end of the year.
Okay, now German students are growing less confident about finding a job quickly after graduation, and that's a new study by consulting firm Ernst & Young, or EY, highlights those concerns. Now, Chiponda, what stands out from this survey?
Well, Anyeti, there are now significantly fewer German students who are confident about finding a job that meets their requirements or expectations and qualifications compared to 2 years ago. Now, in the EY survey, nearly 2 out of 5 respondents said that they were confident that they would be able to secure a suitable job after graduation, and that actually represents a 15 percentage point decline compared to the 2024 survey. Now, more students are now pessimistic about their prospects on the German labor market compared to 2 years ago. Now, the EY survey is actually very representative of the trends that we have been seeing here in Germany on the labor market. Last year, unemployment rose faster than it did in 2024, so much that by the end of 2025, there were 65% more unemployed people who with a university degree than there were in 2015. And joblessness has been rising even in sectors in which students were guaranteed jobs after graduation, and that's like in the natural sciences, in IT, and even engineering.
Okay, so finally, how does this job survey in Germany compare with other European countries?
Well, if we look at the latest EU figures from March this year, they actually show that Germany has the lowest youth unemployment rate in the European Union at 7.5%, and that is far below the bloc's average of 15.4%. Overall youth unemployment in the EU has declined over the last decade, but of course, if we look at the trends, they can look very different if you're looking at specific countries or different levels of education. And now with the stagnating economy across most of the bloc and the lack of economic certainty, employers are holding off hiring. And of course, there have also been reports about the effects of artificial intelligence on entry-level jobs and even work like data science and coding. And that is why German graduates, much like their peers elsewhere, could be struggling on the job market. Now, in the UK, for instance, youth unemployment has risen to the highest level in just over a decade. Germany isn't there yet, but for the country to reverse the rising graduate unemployment levels, it will need to jumpstart the economy. And unfortunately, Agnetje, there haven't been any signs of that happening so far.
Thank you so much, Chiponda. I hope to see you tomorrow for more European market analysis, particularly from Germany.
Thanks.
Okay, so now let's turn our attention to the cryptocurrencies market, what you call the digital assets market. I would say on your board there that well, it's a flurry of red, almost filling the entire board here, except for the ADA and the TON and the ZEC. So, but for Bitcoin, which is the world's largest digital assets, the price was down by 0.83%. Not the price there. No, the price was down by 1.44% at $62,610. That's for the Bitcoin, while Ethereum was down by 0.83%. This is the price for Ethereum, while BNB also down 0.72%, 597, just below the $600 mark. Now, for the crypto headlines, what we have here is the SBI Shinsei is linking bank deposits to crypto rewards in Japan. So that's the SBI is Japan's holding, which is deepening its push into digital assets by offering vouchers. So now the chief executive of the company. Okay, so now the company is actually saying that it's joining forces to influence a major crypto regulation bill currently before the U.S. Senate. Now, executives from the firm, including Coinbase, Block, and venture capital giant Andreessen Horowitz, are urging lawmakers to retain a key provision saying that they protect innovations in the digital space. Now, in a letter sent to Senate leaders John Thune and Chuck Schumer, the executive argued that software developers should not be treated like financial institutions or money transmitters under the proposed law. Now, the crypto industry says removing the provision could discourage blockchain innovation and create regulatory uncertainty for developers and technology companies across the United States. Now let's take a look at some other stories there, where we see the crypto markets rebounding, as Bitcoin, as Ethereum posting gains. Also on the board here, we see that London BTC company deals, they've gone into the first gold project. And finally, crypto executives are urging the US Congress to keep exceptions for developers. So those are the stories that we'll be tracking, as well as the markets for Tuesday. I'll see you on Wednesday.